Got to go to somebody else. Mayfield pulls it down now on the run. They're going to make it to the end zone for the touchdown. One now. Chubb, running room to the 10, the 5, touchdown. Third down, Hunt breaks a tackle and he's got a first down. Here's still on his feet. Kareem Hunt breaks it towards the end zone and he's in. Surround your hands quickly. Third and goal. The end zone is caught by Njoku.
Welcome, everybody, to the DAWGS podcast. I'm Clarence Wilson, and we have a special guest today. But right before we get to our special guest, as always with me is my main man, Ruben Rodriguez, Double R. Ruben, how you feeling?
What's up, Clarence? You can't forget me, man. I mean, I'm here. Blake Weiner or Weiner? Weiner is with us, and we're glad to have him. He was very gracious when I asked him last week if he could hop on with us. We were on one of the teams, and we got into some conversations, and I reached out to him, and he's gracing us with his expertise and his presence here tonight. Clarence, let's get rolling.
That's right.
Thanks, guys.
So, thank you for coming on with us, Blake. We really appreciate it. We know there's a whole lot of Twitter lawyers out there, but we wanted to get the real thing in here.
Yeah.
Some of the Twitter lawyers don't really like me very much.
That's okay, but in this day and age, the truth isn't necessarily embraced anymore. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of refreshing to hear it from, and you got to take into effect too that there's a lot of Browns fans out here that want the exact opposite. So
I mean, I'm a Browns fan. That's why I got into this conversation. So I had my biases too, but sort of my legal perspective of it has sort of taken over at this point, and now I'm just more always thinking about what the next steps are there.
Of course you are. Blake, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Where you went to school, what kind of law you're practicing now? And
Sure. So I went to Georgetown Law School. I graduated 4 years ago. After Georgetown Law, I clerked in a federal court in the Southern District of West Virginia for a year. After that, I'm going to get less specific on the details after that because I don't want to give the impression I'm here in my capacity for that employer. I'm just here in my personal capacity. But I can say after that, I worked as a prosecutor in a major city for over a year, and then I worked in civil court. I worked as a civil litigator for I'll call it a major corporation for about a year.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Hey.
Excellent. So Blake, I guess first, what is your stance or what you're seeing or where we're at right now with Deshaun Watson? As we were kind of discussing before, the commissioner said that he's not going to place him on the exempt list. But as far as like any kind of legal jeopardy, where do you kind of see him at this particular moment? So
from a legal perspective, I mean, the fact that he beat 2 grand jury indictments is huge. I mean, if I'm Deshaun Watson, that's the most concerning thing to me. Not that the civil cases aren't very concerning, but I mean, when you're talking about the criminal justice system and how that can sort of swallow you up very quickly, that to me would always be the most concerning. So the fact that he's basically done with those at this point. I mean, criminal charges could always come. They could come to me tomorrow. So we can't say for sure that he's never going to face issues, but we do know that right now he's cleared. From a civil perspective, we're really just talking about money and we're talking about time. And if I'm Deshaun, as an outsider looking at this case and after seeing, an excerpt of some of the deposition testimony yesterday, I'm a little concerned about, if I'm Deshaun Watson, I'd be concerned about my liability here. If I'm his lawyer, I'd be concerned about my case. I mean, every time I am thinking to myself, okay, if I'm Deshaun Watson, if I'm Deshaun Watson's lawyer, here's how I would frame my legal defense. Here's how I would frame this issue. And I feel pretty good about this. And then something new comes up, whether it's deposition testimony or a statement that I found out that he made in the past about it, where I think, okay, well, that fact no longer fits in with this theory that made me feel good. How is this going to work?
Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned right now about his standing in his civil cases.
And Blake, and that leads me to think about this too. I got a couple of things that just to piggyback on that. The first of all, the fact that he beat these two grand juries, that doesn't mean that the criminal part of this is by any means done. What I'm saying by that is, are there other counties involved here? Are there other women from? There was a woman that lived, for instance, in Atlanta, that he flew in to do a massage for him. Could that person file a criminal suit in Fulton County, for instance, or is a criminal aspect of all this concluded? Secondly, I'll ask you a couple at a time. Secondly, there's a lot to be said about all the back and forth with the internet and the Twitter lawyers and all this about the difference between an actual not being indicted and being not guilty. And there's a lot of people that can't correlate the difference between the two. Please explain why that is the big difference, because there's no double jeopardy involved in a person that is not indicted. Is that correct? As opposed to being not guilty.
That's correct. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. So the first part, so this is where it touches on sort of the limited information that we as a public know. From everything that I've read, from all the information that I have as just a public citizen, there were only 10 women filing complaints. And that means that there are, if my math is correct, 12 women who are involved in the civil suits who have chosen not to file criminal complaints. I don't know why those 12 women have chosen not to file. I don't know when those 12 women's events occurred. I don't know how the statute of limitations could apply.
Or where they were. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Or where they were.
Or where they were.
Yeah.
Exactly. What I do know is that for those 9 women in the one county in Texas, and then the one woman in the other county in Texas, unless they have new evidence that they give to the prosecutor's office, which is very unlikely, because why would they get new evidence now? Unless they get new evidence, those cases are never coming back. Not because it's impossible, because like you said, on the double jeopardy perspective, they could always do it. The district attorney's office could try to indict him again tomorrow on the same cases. It's just that that's not how it works in practice.
Okay. And again, you know, the expense that's incurred with all that, with each individual county. Again, like you said, if the evidence wasn't raw enough, I guess, if it wasn't there, why bother, you know, keep beating a dead horse, so to speak? I mean,
right, they're not going to bring charges multiple times in a row,
exactly.
Like I said, unless they get new evidence.
Clarence?
You know what? Can you explain a little bit more about some of the things that you're seeing, I guess, in what Deshaun is using as a defense? I saw a tweet from yours earlier where he was discussing from one of Deshaun's depositions, where he was discussing something about why he flew in a particular woman for one of his massage appointments. And you would say that wasn't something that looked good. Can you just go in a little bit more into depth and about what maybe some of the things that you're seeing, I guess, that don't leave you feeling, I guess, good about some of the things in his deposition and whatnot?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I'd also like to clarify that it's so much easier to do it in this kind of forum because it's free flowing and I have unlimited characters. You know, when I'm on Twitter and I'm trying to find out the right way to say it to match in the characters, there's always something I'm leaving out, or maybe a misphrasing that I look back and go, I should have phrased that better. So this will be a better opportunity for me to more completely explain it. So the problem that I'm having with what I'm seeing from his defense is he seems to be taking a position that is not going to be instinctual for a juror, right? So like, for example, given his circumstance, it is a conceivable defense it doesn't raise eyebrows as a defense if he took the position that these were all completely normal massages and these women are extorting him. Okay, that's a defense that if I'm a juror, I can go, okay, I can see how that could happen. Explain it to me, right? It's also a conceivable defense where he could say, I would regularly use women for massages. A lot of times it would, it would lead to sex because women find me attractive, and I would specifically pick women on Instagram that looked like maybe they were a little, loose, for lack of a better term. And if we had sex, cool. If not, no big deal. I got a massage. I would just let it happen naturally. If that was a defense, okay, that, and please, the two of you two are potential jurors one day. You tell me if
Yeah.
that raises eyebrows. To me, is okay. I can buy that. Let's go on that road. The problem I have is he's like taking different roads depending on the question. And as a juror, that's going to make me think, wait, who is this guy? What is he talking about? Nothing he's saying fits logically in a nice pattern. So for an example, in his deposition, he's asked, were these women attractive? And he says, I have a girlfriend. I can't even understand how I can. So basically with that answer, what he's doing is he's saying, I'm so pure. I am so in love with my girlfriend. I can't even talk to you about attractiveness of other women. That's not in my mind. So he's painting a picture there of sort of innocence, right? And of sort of almost like being naive, like attractiveness. They're just, no, massage. Okay, that's fine if that's the road you're going to go on. But then he wants to take the second road where he has his attorney has admitted that he engaged in consensual sex at times with massage therapists. That's been admitted by his attorney. And so presumably he's going to admit that at some point for some case. So you're asking a jury now to believe that you would do massages with women on Instagram and have sex with them, but also book massages with women on Instagram, not thinking about how attractive they are. Yeah. That is quite simply not believable. You have just painted yourself into a corner where, even though it's a small fact, it doesn't mean he raped women. It doesn't mean he assaulted them. But what it does mean is you're giving me answers that aren't consistent and that don't match and map onto reality of how human beings really behave.
And by what you're saying, in the course of a criminal trial, wouldn't that be construed as reasonable doubt?
Well, so that's
if I'm on a jury and I have to convict somebody without reasonable doubt. I mean,
but he's not dealing with reasonable doubt here.
Not in a civil case.
Civil case is preponderance of the evidence.
Okay.
And so that's what's even more dangerous is that the burden is on the plaintiff, and that's another thing people are, yelling at me on Twitter. He doesn't have to prove anything. The plaintiffs have to prove it, right? But here's the problem: if this goes to trial, a plaintiff is going to get on the stand, presumably, cry, tell her story. She might very well be believable. She might very well be sympathetic. Okay, that's strong evidence. On top of that, she's going to tell the jury, he DM'd me on Instagram out of nowhere. I've never met this person before. I don't even have my license listed on Instagram. He just DMs me. That's second strong evidence that Deshaun Watson isn't interested in sex with her. Okay, and then so at this point, those two pieces of evidence by themselves, and we're not even including maybe a woman he flew out, right? We're just thinking about those two. Those pieces of evidence, that by itself might be enough for preponderance of the evidence. It's 51%, right? So now with that, Deshaun Watson is going to have, or he should feel an obligation to explain himself. If he gets up there and says, I have nothing to say, just rely on what she said, he's going to get convicted. Because he's not convicted, he's going to be found liable because that testimony by itself is likely going to convince jurors by a preponderance of the evidence. So he needs to explain, how can I explain that I flew a woman out I've never seen before? How can I explain that, what a coincidence, this woman is beautiful? Well, you can explain it by saying, yeah, sex was in my mind, maybe. But he has now taken a contradictory stance in at least one deposition where he's basically saying, attractiveness, what do I even do with that? No, girlfriend. It's kind of absurd.
Yeah. And based on that, though, wouldn't you think that the attorney for the women and the women themselves, they know that he's going to have to give a definitive answer to all the questions, as opposed to, saying what you laid out, that, wait a minute, I'm not saying that they're not, because I still, to my mind, can't believe that all 22 of them are not telling the truth there.
Right.
That's just me. I mean, you got.
Well, can I address that for a second?
Mhm.
This is
Sure.
something I think gets lost sometimes in this conversation. People want to have this conversation like it's a black and white conversation. They want to have the conversation like these women are either extorting him and he's pure and innocent, or these women are all lying, or a lot of them are lying, or whatever. The truth is usually more complicated than that, especially in sex cases, especially in cases involving like romantic situations. We live in a world where a lot of actions in sexual situations are sort of unspoken. It's sort of, reading the other person's body language, reading the other person's, eye contact. A lot goes into it. So it is entirely possible that, let's say, at least 5 of the women, or even let's say, just for argument's sake, it's entirely possible 22 of those women feel like they were violated. And it's also possible that Deshaun Watson thinks about those experiences and thinks, I didn't do anything wrong. They looked like they were interested. They gave me the eye contact. They gave me the smirk. They, whatever it was. I made a move. Maybe some of them looked a little uninterested after I made the move, and maybe then I stopped. Who knows? But it doesn't necessarily mean it's as straightforward as people want it to be.
Interesting.
Very, very.
You had mentioned, I don't think, I'm trying to think of, get my words here, but Deshaun Watson had publicly come out and said, as anyone in this situation would do, that I'm going to do everything in my power to clear my name. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to take it to the end until I make sure not that I'm found innocent of these charges, but to clear my name completely. That being said, and I'll ask you, being an attorney, what would cause an attorney to tell his client, who is vehemently trying to clear his name, to invoke the Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination?
That's not much. So first, he was only invoking, to my knowledge, to my understanding, he was only invoking his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent while the criminal grand jury indictments were pending, right? And now that the indictments are over with at this moment, he's not pleading the Fifth anymore, which is why we got that clip that I posted on Twitter of his deposition testimony. So, but going back to when he was pleading the Fifth, frankly, I mean, if I was an attorney, I would also advise the same thing. If you are in jeopardy of a criminal charge, my advice is shut up. I don't care if you are the most innocent person in the world. Shut up, because nothing you say will help you. Nothing you say will help you. Maybe something we can show them will help you. Maybe something I can say to them will help you. But you, as the defendant, opening your mouth and telling stories. As a former prosecutor, I can tell you, if I was ever given a videotape of somebody that I was considering charging, I would just watch the video to think, how is this going to help me charge this person? Listen, as a prosecutor, to be clear though, as a prosecutor, I had defense attorneys often send me videos or a piece of extrinsic evidence that says, take a look at this. I think you should drop the charge. And I watched it and it was exculpatory. And I said, this is over. This is a crap case. You're right. I think your client is not guilty. We're out of here. But that's not what the concern is in talking. He's not going to give exculpatory evidence when he's talking. He can really only hurt himself. And so I don't think it's a problem that he was asserting his fifth.
Now, Busby, is that the attorney for?
Yeah, so Hardin is Watson's attorney.
Watson.
Busby is the plaintiff's attorney.
And that's why I brought that up, because I saw a clip, and it wasn't on Twitter, it was on television when I saw it. Busby was asking Watson a series of rapid fire questions. I mean, he was bringing them out there. He was answering them. in short 3 or 4 word answers. He was coming at him and he was asking him the questions, and all of a sudden, the last 2 questions, while he was being deposed, the last 2 questions were the 2 questions where he invoked his Fifth Amendment right.
Where did you see this?
That was on Fox 8 News this morning. I saw it when I was getting up.
So okay.
I mean, yeah, he was asking him the questions. He was answering the questions. He was standing up there. He was being stoic. And all of a sudden, the final 2 questions that he was asked, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right to self-incrimination. After he was sitting there answering these questions back and forth, do you think at that time his lawyer probably gave him a little tap and said what you just mentioned? Shut up.
Well, sure. If he was answering questions in the deposition and then randomly invoked his Fifth, I'm assuming either his attorney at that moment told him to, or they had planned ahead. If you get asked the specific question, do it. I do want to point out, though, I watched the Fox clip from the local news channel. I did see a portion where he invoked his Fifth. However, I could have sworn that was a clip from a previous deposition taken from before the indictments that was sort of inserted at the end of the video, showing that deposition. Maybe I saw a different clip, maybe I remember incorrectly, but I think that might be possible.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Since he signed with the Browns, he did the press conference, and this kind of piggybacks off of what we were discussing earlier about him speaking more. He has proclaimed his innocence. Like he said, he's almost fought against some of these things. Some people have called it a bad look. Others have said, obviously he's saying he's innocent. So, if he's fighting it this hard, maybe he possibly is. I remember when I first saw this, and I actually tweeted it at you, Blake. It kind of gave me Michael Vick vibes. Not saying that he was, not saying he's guilty, but I remember when Michael Vick, the charges were levied against him for running the dogfighting ring. All he came out and said was, "I'm innocent. I'm innocent." I remember the one clip that I think he was in a club or something like that. He said, Mike Vick is going to beat this case. Turns out that he was guilty of everything that he was being charged with. When you see this, and I'm not asking you to make a judgment call of whether you think he's innocent or not, but when you see him kind of coming out and saying that he's innocent and he is going to fight this, what kind of goes through your mind when you see something like this?
The same thing that goes through my mind when I go to the grocery store and I buy groceries and the cashier says, "Have a nice day." I think that's what people say. "You have a nice day too." That means nothing. It means nothing. If you're innocent, then you're going to say you're innocent. If you're guilty, why would you not say you're innocent still? There's no benefit to you to say I'm guilty. There's no benefit to say, I really want to settle these cases. These are not good. No, there's no benefit to that. You're always going to assert your innocence. You're always going to say not guilty before you get a plea agreement in criminal cases. Like if you have a good lawyer, if you have a good legal strategy, you always need to start off from the strongest leverage. And your best leverage is always to give the opposing party the impression that you are going to make it as difficult as possible for them to get what they want in order for them to relax on what they're asking for. And so for him to say, "I don't want to settle, I'm not going to settle, I'm completely innocent," that is completely unsurprising to me and totally expected.
And Clarence, just to piggyback, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Blake, but I think the difference between the Michael Vick case and this one is that Michael Vick ultimately got indicted.
Oh yeah, Michael Vick spent time.
So, people would say, "Oh, he's going to beat this," but as soon as he got indicted, that tune changed rapidly.
It was a wrap.
But also, I do want to say here, Michael Vick was it was a federal crime. He was indicted, I believe, by a federal court. That is a different ball game.
Yeah.
I clerked in federal court. I've worked in federal court. A federal court versus state court is very different. You're talking about the difference between the FBI and local police departments. You're talking about different prosecutors. So if you're getting investigated by a federal agency for a crime, you are in deep, deep, deep shit. You're almost certainly screwed. State crime is a little different.
could it quite possibly be that the 10 women, and you know where I'm getting at, if the 10 women in Texas could get these charges refiled federally, or is it
So
a
no,
state of Texas kind of thing?
no. So you can only get a federal crime has only occurred. Federal government has limited jurisdiction, limited ability to charge people. I mean, it involves the Commerce Clause and federal statutes that can be made pursuant to the Commerce Clause. Basically, like it would have to involve state lines, and so there is as we talked about earlier, at least one victim who said she was flown across state lines
Mhm,
for a massage. There might be some argument there where the federal government could get involved.
mhm.
Putting a pin in that. The rest of them, I don't think anything has to do with state lines. And so even if the federal government wanted to get involved, they couldn't, unless again there was some sort of like trafficking element. With respect to the woman who was flown, number one, I don't know if she's pressing charges. Number
Mhm.
two, even if she was, I don't think the federal government, I don't know. I don't know if federal prosecutors in that area would be interested in pursuing a case that at the end of the day might be a misdemeanor. Yeah.
It's just all confusing to me how, and again, this is a Mr. Sarcastic 101, but how is, and God, I can't believe I'm saying this, is dog fighting a federal crime, or can be prosecuted federally, but not this situation?
Because I don't, and I'm almost talking completely out of school here. I haven't looked at the Michael Vick case in
Mhm.
years. I haven't
Yeah,
looked at the
yeah,
Michael Vick
yeah.
case since I've been a lawyer. But I believe, I'm guessing, I'm making an educated guess that he wasn't indicted for like killing an animal. I don't actually think that's a federal crime. I think he was. They allege that he was running some sort of like interstate dogfighting ring, like
Yeah,
a
I believe that was correct.
conspiracy to commit crimes across state lines. I believe
Right.
that was the case.
That
Again,
makes sense.
I urge
I
everybody to
just
look.
thought, I just thought it was confined to one specific place, and now they're going to make, what's the correlation here? What's the difference between?
So just as a quick
Yeah.
example, you can't like there is no federal, to my knowledge, there's no federal crime of murder, like just by itself murder.
Mhm.
If I shoot somebody or if somebody shoots me in my apartment after we get into a fight, the federal government can't get involved outside of they could do a gun charge, but an actual like kill, that would be a state crime because it
Okay.
didn't occur across state lines. It doesn't involve federal issues. It's a state issue.
Interesting. So don't be coming at me, Clarence, because I don't want to pull no federal charges on you or anything. We saw today Mary Kay Cabot tweeted something out about Roger Goodell. He said they're going to wait until there's more, obviously more. We got 10 minutes left, guys. More information as it goes on about what he's going to do at the NFL level. And if you can kind of like separate here what he had mentioned about the personal kind, and I said this before, that the three most important words in this entire thing is not "I am innocent." The three most important words now, as far as Deshaun Watson is concerned, is personal conduct policy from the NFL.
Yeah.
According to Roger Goodell, the personal conduct policy is independent from all criminal charges. Blake, explain the word independent of the criminal charges and how that differentiates from actually being suspended or not having the ability to be suspended.
Yeah, well, the NFL, they have they're a private organization. They have their own rules. They have their own, contracts about what constitutes. It's like saying, I don't know what you gentlemen do for a living, but whoever's listening, what they do for a living, it's like saying, can you be fired for your job, whether or not you committed a crime? Can you commit a crime and not be fired from your job? The answer to both those questions is yes and yes. Your job can say, oh, I heard you got arrested last night for public intoxication. That's cool with me. I'm an alcoholic. I don't care. Your job could say, hey, I heard you screaming at somebody at the grocery store. That's not against the law, but I find that disgusting. I don't want an employee who does that. You're out of here. So the NFL is no different. The NFL is going to do its investigation. Its investigation is independent of what happened with these other, you have a criminal process, you have a civil process. The NFL doesn't seem to care about what happens with those processes. They say we have our own process. We have the NFL way, and we're going to do our own investigation. We don't care what the office in Texas did. We don't care about what the judges are doing. We're going to do our own investigation and make our own decision.
And real quick here, Clarence, before we run out of time, I know you've been itching to ask this, and me too, and I got to get it from Blake, man. Blake, seriously, do you think that Goodell can hang this man for a year?
I do.
Suspension.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to be clear. If it was 4 games, I would be shocked. I wouldn't say that's impossible. If it's a year, I wouldn't even be shocked, though. I just keep saying this to people. First of all, the NFL is issuing suspensions on one basis only, in my opinion. It's public relations, period. If nobody was talking about it, if nobody cared about it, the NFL would not go out of its way to investigate. That's just not how they operate. The NFL cares about public relations, its public image. Kareem Hunt got 8 games, half of a season. What he did was bad. It's on video, and it's, a lot of people think it's disgusting. But if you're asking me, do I think this Deshaun Watson situation is twice as bad for the NFL from a public relations perspective as Kareem Hunt's? Absolutely. I think the NFL would rather have 4 Kareem Hunts a year than 1 Deshaun Watson a year. It's almost 4 times as bad. So if you're going to give Kareem Hunt 8 games, you've got to give Deshaun Watson at least 8 games. And then after that, maybe 12. Maybe 12 is more, probably maybe in the ballpark. But a year would not surprise me at all.
What your best guess, right? Just from everything you're seeing and being an NFL fan, what do you think it's going to come down to be? What are you kind of thinking the suspension is going to be?
I have been thinking a year, but because the NFL a lot of times gives less than I actually end up thinking, I would say 12.
Okay.
12. And by the way, just as a Browns fan, taking off my knowledge of the law, I think Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Jimmy Haslam, I think they made this deal knowing that was a possibility.
I do too. I don't think they're naive to think that something big isn't going to happen here. When the minimum suspension for violating the personal conduct policy, the minimum is 6 games.
Oh, 6. Oh.
So we all know that's coming. So Jacoby Brissett better turn into the next John Elway, man, because we're going to need him.
Well, from what they were talking about, from what they were talking about, I heard earlier today, they might not be able to get rid of Baker. So who's
I mean, you stick your foot in the mud, man, you're going to get dirty. And that's all.
Yes.
I think this is something, if they were going to do it, they should have dealt with the Baker situation before they did what they did.
Absolutely.
Didn't end up that way. We're running out of time, guys. Yeah.
I guess I want to thank you, Blake, for coming on. Most definitely.
Absolutely.
I honestly, I feel like now I can be deemed a Twitter lawyer. If you can send me a diploma from the education that you gave us today, that would be awesome.
I had a guy on Twitter the other day have an argument with me, and when it ended, he thought he won, and he said, "I just wiped my ass with your law degree."
Oh my God!
So I can give you the tissue paper that he basically used as my law degree.
That's crazy. Yeah, you school a whole lot of folks out there that I hope they're listening and get some education here. Blake, thanks a lot, man. Listen, stay in touch. We'll get together, man, when all this goes away, and we'll talk some real football, man.
I would love it.
I want to do this again where we can a little bit more time and we can actually get into the football perspective of things, as opposed to the legal
Absolutely,
perspective.
man. We'll keep in touch. Clarence, take us home, man. In the words of the great Frederick Kitchens,
if you do not wear brown and orange, you don't matter. Thanks to Blake. Everybody have a good night.
Peace, everybody. Blake, thanks again, my man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.